It's the top of the hour. Putting the U in HBCU. We are HSRN. You are listening to Green Talk for Brown Folks with Ryan Marshall on HSRN.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Green Talk for Brown Folks. I'm your host, Ryan Marshall. I am so excited for this week because we are still talking about home ownership and Black home ownership, the Great American Dream Part 2. We've got a lot of exciting things to talk about, and I really want to jump into this. Last week, we had a great conversation in part 1, just hearing the stories that people had to share about their successes, about their failures or challenges, anxieties, about being a first-time homeowner, about trying to get a home. And obviously, that's one of the greatest things that anybody could ever have. One of their biggest investments is being able to buy a home. And so that was really good to have that type of conversation. And so now we're going to come back and shift back in focus a little bit with a very special guest. And I just want to read a little bit about him so you get an understanding of who he is. This person's personally originated over $1 billion in mortgage loans over the last 2 decades. Hear me, $1 billion. That is a lot of money. They refer to him as America's mortgage coach, with the unique ability to demystify the complexity of mortgages into easy to understand concepts. He's the president and CEO of Mainstreet Mortgage, located in Westlake, California. He received his undergraduate degree from Brigham Young University, an MBA from USC. Beautiful wife, 3 beautiful kids. They all reside in Southern California. I am here with John W. Mallett. John, thank you so much for talking with our audience today.
Oh, you bet, Ryan. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on your show. This is fantastic.
I really appreciate it. So, John, obviously, the statistics about Black home ownership versus white home ownership. And I believe the recent studies that I saw were that 69% of white households are homeowners. But that number is significantly lower for Black households, right around 45%. Can you talk a little bit about the history of African Americans as it pertains to housing discrimination, home ownership, and things like that maybe have led to that?
Yeah, you bet. And that is it's a sad commentary, actually, when you really drill down to it, that the discrimination against the African American community has been so intentional for such a long period of time, and yet the opportunity that we have today is like none other. I mean, right now, there are between 1.7 and 3 million African-American households that can buy homes, and most of them do not know it. It's an incredible number, and yet the gap between Black homeownership and white homeownership is like 30 points, and it's about the same as it was in 1968 when the Fair Housing Act was made. And so there is a tremendous amount of opportunity. And unfortunately, banks did what was referred to as a lot of redlining, where they would exclude certain areas of the city from making loans. And also there would be zoning aspects that would also play a big part in the discriminatory nature of home ownership towards the Black community. And those have been changing over time to the point to where now there is phenomenal opportunities where, quite frankly, as a mortgage professional, it doesn't matter to me what area you live in. There are no constraints on me whatsoever. Not one single constraint that will make it so that you cannot buy a home because of the color of somebody's skin. That no longer exists. And the fact is that there is tremendous opportunity for it. It's really beginning to get an idea of what that opportunity is, what it looks like. And the biggest challenge that the African American community has been, in my opinion, is the idea that there's not been a lot of intergenerational wealth that's been able to be passed down from generation to generation. And because people's net worth and the majority of their income or their asset base or their net worth really is based on home ownership. And that makes up a big part of their portfolio, you might say. And so now there is just a huge opportunity. And the thing that's so interesting, and this is probably one of the most important things that we can bring up on this, Ryan, is that children who grow up in homes that are rented are as much as 15% less likely to buy a home than those children who grow up in homes that are owned by their parents. And that is a huge, that's a big discrepancy, and that is what's really causing a lot of the African American community not to realize that they really can buy. In fact, there was a study done by Fannie Mae that showed that they did surveys to renters. 45% of people responded that they had to have 20% down. Now that's crazy, because that means if I want to buy a $400,000 home, Ryan, that means I got to come in with $80,000 down. Well, that right there closes the door. There's no deal. There's no possibility. I'm not even going to consider buying a home. But that's a big myth, because really you only need 3%. Well, 3% is $12,000. And I know I can come up with $12,000 somehow, one way or the other. I can scratch, I can do whatever I need to do, but I can come up with that income and that amount of money as far as the down payment goes, whether it's a 401k or whether it's a savings or whatever it might be, or gift. People can do that. And so there's all of these myths out there that generally people are not really educated about. And what we're doing is really focusing on that educational aspect to say, no, this is the way it really is. You can buy, and this is what you have to do. And you would be amazed. I mean, I have people who call me on the phone. And Ryan, this is the first words out of their mouth every single time. I can almost bet on it every time. They call up and they say, we were looking at houses this weekend. We were just kind of dreaming about it. We came upon this one house. And then this is what they say. They say, I know we can't qualify, but is there a possibility? They always introduce it with that idea. And then about 5 or 10 minutes into the discussion, they realize that they can qualify. And 9 times out of 10, they're in a home within 60 days.
Wow. That's powerful. It's so important to know, for people to know that it is very possible to be able to get a home. And you were speaking about the 401k and the retirement, and I think you and I had just come off a call, and we were talking about how you can use a tax-free vehicle like a Roth IRA, where up to $10,000 of the money that you have sitting in your Roth IRA can be used tax-free for a first-time home buyer. And so vehicles like that are so very important, and people, that could be part of that $12,000 if you're trying to scratch and claw. Well, heck, I have $80,000 in my Roth IRA. Well, okay, 10,000 of it I can use tax-free. Well, all I need to do now is get $2,000. I can get $2,000, borrow $2,000 from a friend or something, or do something.
Yeah, so you can borrow against your 401k. I mean, there's a whole host of things you can do. And what's really interesting to me, this is really, I was reading a survey the other day, and I reside in California, right? So I live in California, and I was looking at and I was looking at the affordability of home ownership of the population that can afford to buy a home in the state of California. And they come out and they say it's the lowest it's been in a long time. It's 23%. And I just thought, you know what? That's like going to a doctor and him coming out and saying, well, you have cancer, you have 5 days to live. That is ridiculous. It's interesting. I get people in my office, and now a lot by phone, of course, and they basically say, well, we can't qualify. And I say to them, yes, based on what you have right now, no, you cannot qualify to buy a home. But if you make these changes, you'll be able to do that. And that ownership criteria, or that percentage of people who can buy, goes right out the window. I've seen people pull trailers onto the backyard of their parents' home, live there for a year, pay off their debts, ask for raises, go back to school. I mean, a host of things. And all of a sudden, they're in a position to buy a home. So once you get that idea that you can buy, then all of a sudden it clicks in this drive to buy. And man, I've seen people do things that are just fantastic. I mean, they're just so providential that you can say that it really is a reality. It can happen.
So we're just getting started in this one-on-one interview with John W. Mallett, America's mortgage coach. He is also the president and CEO of Mainstreet Mortgage. We are going to take a break, and when we come back, John is going to share with us some tips, potentially, and some nuggets on how people and some strategies that they can use to get into buying a home, maybe some of the challenges that he hears from a lot of people and how you can overcome those challenges. I cannot wait for that, John. Stand by there, John, and stand by everybody else. This is Ryan Marshall, your host of GTBF. We'll be right back.
You are listening to Green Talk for Brown Folks with Ryan Marshall on HSRN.
Welcome back, everybody, to Green Talk for Brown Folks. This is your host, Ryan Marshall. I am so excited because I have one fantastic guest that is on this show today. I'm here with John W. Mallett, the president and CEO of Mainstreet Mortgage, and he is America's mortgage coach. So privileged to have him here today. We have a course coming up here later on tonight, and before we get into that, I do want to ask you if you could drop a few nuggets and a few tidbits to some of the listeners out here, because a lot of them, they are trying to buy a home. They're maybe prospective first-time home buyers, and they may come to somebody like you and say, hey, John, you gave some really good information. I'd really, really like to get in contact with you about it. What are some of the challenges that you think you hear most of the time from prospective home buyers, and maybe how can you overcome some of those challenges?
Well, I think that's a great question, right? That really hits the nail on the head, because what you're talking about here is very expansive, and you're basically saying, what are the myths? Because what they are, they're all myths. They're all myths that you got to have great credit. It's a myth that you got to have 20% down. I mean, it's a myth that I can't qualify based on my income. Well, chances are pretty good wherever you live, there's a possibility that you can qualify. And the restraining forces really are that most individuals in the black community, a lot of them disproportionately have come from homes that are rented. And when you're growing up in that kind of environment, because I grew up in the projects. I grew up when I was, when I was 8 years old, my father basically walked out, and my mother moved us to a town in Southern California so she could finish her college education. And from ages 8 to 14, we moved 4 to 5 times. And we were either evicted, or we couldn't make the payment, or we were asked to leave. And so when I was 14, we ended up in the projects. That's where I spent most of my teenage years growing up. And when I was 12, you go back a couple of years, my mother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And then when I was 18, she died. And so while I cannot really relate to what it's like being a person of color, I certainly can relate to what it's like to grow up in that kind of an atmosphere, in that kind of an environment. And when you grow up in that kind of an environment, it's kind of this issue, this idea that this is the way it's always going to be. And the facts is what we'll be talking about in our workshop or seminar that we're doing is going to be, no, it doesn't have to be that way. And this is why. I mean, there is so much potential out there for people to buy. I've had so many people come in my office that did not qualify, and yet within 6 months to a year, they were ready to go. And I think, Ryan, your question is so profound, because it's really about myths. It's really about not knowing what you don't know.
I certainly appreciate you saying that. Here with America's mortgage coach, John W. Mallett. He is an incredible person here, the author of Buy Your First Home Today. He's also going to be a major host of Transforming Lives Through Homeownership. You can go sign up through hsrn.com and click on HBCU Home Ownership. I'll also be a part of that as well, and that'll be tonight at 8 p.m. John, why should people be a part of that Transforming Lives Through Homeownership course tonight?
Well, I think what it does is it dispels some myths. It gives you the reality of what really it takes to buy a home. And I think even more important than that, Ryan, is the idea of what homeownership can do. We're not just talking about buying a house. We're talking about transforming lives through homeownership. A person's life is different going from a renter to a buyer. And it is amazing the stories that I get from my family members and our clients who basically say, my life has changed totally. I mean, there's a 50% chance less if you own a home that you get divorced. There's less incidence of asthma for children in children. There's a higher incidence of children doing better in school. There's all of these things that are transformative aspects. You know, people just think about the idea of buying a home and making the investment, but man, that's why I call home ownership is a sacred trust. It's something that's, if you take care of it, it will take care of you. And the idea of home ownership is deeper than just buying a home and not throwing away rent. It's transformation. It's a different way of life and of building wealth and building stability. It's really about stability.
That's important. Please sign up for the Transforming Lives Through Home Ownership course with John W. Mallett. I'll be there as well, giving some financial literacy tips to help you secure enough capital to buy a home, the places where you can, use your money to buy a home. And then also, John is the author of Buy Your First Home Today. Please go find that book. Please go buy that. It is an incredible book. Can you tell everybody where they can find you, John, and how they can get in contact with you if they have more questions?
Sure. Yeah, you bet. They can go to if they go to johnwmallett.com, that's JOHNWMALLETT.com. You can download the first chapter of the book free of charge. You can buy the book on Amazon. If you attend tomorrow night and you're there, then everybody who's in attendance, I will be giving the book away free. So I will send you a copy at no cost. If you end up attending, I'll be more than happy to do that.
That's awesome. And then any social media that they can follow you, or any other websites? I know you've got a YouTube page and some other things like that.
Yeah, pretty much YouTube and Facebook. The normal. And the main thing is to give me a call if you have any questions. My direct number is 805-432-2382. I'll be glad to answer your questions and take care of anything I can do to help you.
Well, I certainly appreciate your time coming on to Green Talk for Brown Folks and talking to the listeners today here on HSRN. That's John W. Mallett, President and CEO of Mainstreet Mortgage. He is America's mortgage coach. He is amazing. If you have any mortgage questions, home buying questions, go give him a call and come on and register for that event again, Transforming Lives Through Homeownership. Just go ahead to hsrn.com, click on HBCU Home Ownership, and sign up right there. And it'll be Friday later on tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. If you're on the West Coast listening here, that is going to be amazing, and you won't want to miss that virtual lesson. Thank you so much, John, for coming on.
Oh, you bet. Thank you, Ryan. Great to be with you today. Thanks so much.
Great to have you. And I should have mentioned there that course, Introduction to Transforming Lives Through Homeownership, that is a free course, to go get some great advice about being a first-time home buyer. If you're just trying to look at getting another home, if you're already a home buyer, with America's mortgage coach, John Mallett, and then also getting access to financial literacy. I'll be there to teach some financial education and some information and tidbits on how to help secure funding for buying a home, and some key strategies, some really good strategies. It's a free course. You definitely want to be a part of that. And so really thank John W. Mallett, America's mortgage coach and president and CEO of Mainstreet Mortgage, for coming on the show, coming on Green Talk for Brown Folks, and spreading some really, really good knowledge and positive information. We're going to head to another break. We'll round out the show, and we'll have some final thoughts when we come back. This is GTBF, Green Talk for Brown Folks. I'm your host, Ryan Marshall. We'll be right back.
You are listening to Green Talk for Brown Folks with Ryan Marshall on HSRN.
Welcome back to Green Talk for Brown Folks, GTBF. I'm your host, Ryan Marshall. Thank you so much for being here today. I really, really appreciate it. And we had this beautiful conversation about the great American dream and Black home ownership. And we had part 1 last week, part 2 this week. John W. Mallett was here to be able to drop some knowledge for all of the listeners, all of you, today, and I am really, really appreciative of that. Please go check out John Mallett. Check his website out, johnwmallett.com. Please also sign up for the free introduction to Transforming Lives Through Homeownership. It is going to be a fantastic virtual learning session for those of you that are seeking to become first-time home buyers, for people that are trying to find ways, they're struggling trying to find ways to fund home buying, credit, different things like that, any challenges that you may have. This is the course that you definitely want to go to. It's tonight at 8 p.m., Friday, November 12th, 2021, tonight at 8 p.m., 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, 5 p.m. Pacific, wherever you are listening. John, America's mortgage coach, is going to be there. I'm going to be there as well, and we're going to have a great session. There's still a few slots available, so please go on to hsrn.com, click HBCU Homeownership Community, and go sign up and register to attend that free class. It is so very important. And Black home ownership, we're going to do everything we can to try to get all of the information out there to help raise and increase the percentage of Black households that are Black home owners. It's so very important as well. So thank you so much for joining me here on Green Talk for Brown Folks, GTBF. Next week, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and, I'm not exactly sure what we're going to be specifically talking about, but I have that in mind. I have an idea, and we want to kind of keep it a secret. When I say I don't know what I'm going to talk about, I do know what I'm going to talk about, but how we're going to present it, because last week we did something different by having a conversation instead of just kind of giving you some tips or whatnot. We wanted to hear some of the things that you had to say as well. We may do that again next week, and just have a conversation. And also, we welcome your feedback and ideas here on GTBF. Be sure to find me on social media, email, and that information will be coming up here soon. But for John W. Mallett, America's mortgage coach, I'm Ryan Marshall. Thanks for listening to GTBF, Green Talk for Brown Folks.
Thanks for listening to Green Talk for Brown Folks with Ryan Marshall on HSRN. Follow Ryan's social media on Twitter at Ryan H. Marshall and on Instagram, RHM WealthWave. You can also connect with him via email at ryan.marshall@howmoneyworks.com. That's ryan.marshall@howmoneyworks.com. Join him next Friday at 1 p.m. for another edition of Green Talk for Brown Folks.